A confession or a funeral? What are we doing here? Are we going? I mean, this is obviously involving a mass. Are we having a funeral or are we going to the confession box? What are we doing here?
I think a bit of both. I think it's a little 50-50 on this one. Cowboys get blown out last night, as we all saw, 34-10. The over does cash late with that touchdown by Houston, and they easily covered the 7. But right as we were leaving the show yesterday, you said to me, don't bet on the Cowboys. And I said, I won't. I didn't bet the side, Michael, but I bet Brandon Aubrey over 6.5 points, and I bet the team total Cowboys over 16.5. Michael, I cannot believe those did not get home. The Aubrey one is the one that sticks in my craw this morning that I got to go over with you. Now, of course, he slips on the plant foot right before halftime, which would have made it a 17-13 game, and he's going to have my 7 points at the break, and we don't have any sweat, right? This thing's over, 17-13, We're good at half. And then it was the decision in the third quarter. They kicked the 64-yard field goal by Aubrey. Points are on the board. It's 20-13. You're in the game. It's midway through the third quarter. You get a personal foul against the Texans. The points come off the board. And they decide, let's go try to score this touchdown. Get down in the red zone.
Well, you got to take the penalty. You can't take the point. You got to take it, right?
Totally agree with that. But when you get the 4th and 2 inside the 10 and you're down 10 and it's 4 minutes, don't you still kick the field goal and make it a one-score game? That was the deflation after they decide to go for it, don't get it, and then I felt like the game was over, right? Like, I get the first initial try, but when that stalls, doesn't Mike McCarthy have to kick that field goal and make it a one-score game?
I think he does because he knows his defense isn't going to hold him back there. The whole concept by going for it is, look, it's like what happened in the Minnesota game, right? Minnesota doesn't score. They have they get the ball put down on the 1 yard line, not from going for it, but just from a punt. They run 2 plays into the line. Minnesota's going to get a field goal here at least because they're going to punt it back. They're going to have great. And what happens? They throw a 99-yard touchdown pass. They don't hold them back there. That's what happens. I mean, if your defense isn't good enough to hold them, it's hard to sit there and justify going for it on 4th down. And this Cowboy defense, let's be clear, that wasn't very good all night. I mean, they got a break on the first play of the game on the bubble screen. Who was playing? It looked like they had 9 men on the field on that play, right? Look, this is just a very challenging time for the Cowboys because they're not a good team. I'm writing about it for today on VSiN Online. They're not a good team. They've been outscored at home since they lost to the Green Bay game, 187-69. That Green Bay game took a toll on them. And I think the whole point of my column today is going to be that it was such a disruptive loss. It was such a powerful loss. It was such an unexpected loss that when Jerry had that indecision to bring Mike back and to not bring Mike back, and he decided to bring Mike back but not extend him, the season ended at that point. Mm-hmm. That decision to make Mike lame duck, that decision to bring in a new defense coordinator but really have a hard time with the contract, to me, that set off the offseason planning that we're going to mail this year in. And I think that's the only way you could look at it. If Dak were playing last night, would the game have been more competitive? Yes, no question. Right, there would have been more competitive. Because I'm here to tell you, Dave, Houston's not very good.
No.
Houston's not good enough. And C.J. Stroud has taken giant Mother May I steps backwards. He really has. He hasn't been the same player, right? And I think this offense, a lot of it is Bobby Slovik's inability to advance the offense further. It's the same day one Kyle Shanahan offense that we saw last year that took people off guard. But they haven't really improved in that area. And I think, to me, you look at the numbers. Stroud's numbers have not been – if you look at all the EPAs and all the advanced analytical numbers, Stroud is not having a good year, but they're good enough to beat a bad Dallas team.
We saw the exact same thing. That's exactly what we saw. We saw 2 teams that were actually much closer than a 34-10 score would indicate. And that's not to give the Cowboys any credit. It's really to say Texans were not 24 points better than any other NFL team out there. They just happened to be playing a team that couldn't get out of their own way. In the Cowboys, you mentioned it's 7 straight losses now at home for the Cowboys, dating back to that game against the Cowboys. Longest active home ATS losing streak in the NFL. This is just amazing, and the longest losing streak since 2012 at home. So we're talking about a decade-long stuff where the Cowboys, forget about winning, can't even cover numbers here. And our friend, of course, Femi Abebefe, did say this on X, on Twitter.
There's no one better than Twitter Femi.
Right.
You have to really appreciate Twitter Femi because he's the nicest human.
Absolutely.
But he is the classic Twitter user. He'll hide behind that giant X. And when you aggravate him, man, he's coming out like that bear in the woods.
You ready for this one? This is what he said about the Cowboys. You think this is bad? Wait until they lose to Tommy DeVito on Thanksgiving in front of 50 million viewers. That's what Femi had to say, Michael. And by the way, I was texting with my family. They're so gracious to me, Michael. For literally 4 decades, they've centered this football game on Thanksgiving around our family meal, right? So that we can make sure it's done. Because all I ever say is I just can't miss kickoff. I said, if we miss it this year, I'm okay. Like, if this is the year...
Yeah, I don't think you need to worry about it.
I don't need to watch this, right,
yeah.
Michael? I mean, who needs to see this? If this is what we just saw last night, why do I need to see that?
Because it's what we do on Thanksgiving, though. That's what I think people get lost in sight of, is people say, well, who's going to watch this Green Bay? Who's going to watch this Dallas-New York game? Everybody. I mean, it doesn't matter who's... I mean, we've watched Detroit. Remember people were trying to get Detroit off the Thanksgiving Day slate?
Right, yes.
I mean, it's just part of... It's tradition. You know, you watch it. You may not be as into it, but obviously there's going to be a betting number, right?
Yeah.
The book is going to put up a number. Dallas is probably going to be, what, a 2-point favorite, a 3-point favorite, something like that. And we're going to bet it, and we're going to recommend it. Bill A.D.'s going to give out the sides. Everybody's going to have a voice. And we're all going to sit around with our pants unbuckled, and we're going to watch the game. I mean, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hear that no one's going to watch it. We're all going to watch it because there's going to be a vested interest. I mean, that's what it's all about. That's what Thanksgiving. That's why we love Thanksgiving.
You're absolutely right.
I think it's really bad for the league when Dallas isn't good. I think it's really bad for the league when the Raiders aren't good. I think it's really, really bad for the league when the 2 New York teams aren't good. And this is what we have this year. We have a lot of bad teams. And I think going back to the Cowboys, Jerry's decision to not make a decision.
Yeah.
His decision to extend it out was probably what cost him everything, because I think what he needed was some fresh eyes to come in. Because what I wrote last offseason was they overachieved, not underachieved. Everybody was upset about the Green Bay loss. They got when you get your butts handed to you like that, you're not good enough. And I think, to me, they needed a reset. They needed to push a reset button that we're not as good as we think we are. And they, to think that you're going to go in there with Rico Dowdle as your main back, right? I mean, come on.
It's
like, seriously, this is the plan. That's not a plan. That's a hope. Remember, never confuse hope for a plan.
That's right.
You're hoping Dowdle will be a good player. You're hoping Deuce Vaughn would be a good player. You don't have, and so don't tell me that it's cap implications, because, again, you decided to keep Brandon Cook on the team. You could have signed somebody else. You could have took Brandon Cook's money and given it to Barkley.
Unbelievable. 10.5, by the way, the Cowboys now against the Commanders on Sunday after that blowout loss. But, Michael, I'm watching that game last night, and a couple of things that you said really resonated with me when I'm watching it, which is, one, Zach Martin, this might be the end of the line. He got hurt again last night, and he couldn't really move. You've been on this point here. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame. I think he should, but that might be the end. And then you saw that Tyler Smith goes down in that game as well. And the point here, Michael, is the offensive line, Dak's injury notwithstanding, refixing the defense, this looks like a long overhaul for the Cowboys, for a team that won 12 wins in the last 3 years, Michael. You give away a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance. You give away a 4th-round pick for Mingo, who can't get on the field for the Cowboys after the trade deadline. I mean, Michael, it's looking worse to me. If I'm trying to be optimistic, I don't see it for next year. Like, this doesn't feel like a short-term thing and, we'll be back to 12 wins. I mean, this team looks like they got to overhaul the offensive line and a lot of the skill players and a lot of the defense. I don't know how good and how quick it could take to overhaul in Dallas.
Well, I think they're going to need to get the right coach, right? I'm shocked here. This morning I looked at it. I thought, watching the game last night, I knew it opened at 10.
Right.
The game this weekend in the nation's capital against Washington. And I thought it would move to 12, 12.5. I think it's going to move. Right now it's still at 10. I'm going to look online at some of the other shops, because I can't imagine that it's not going to move. Dallas has, going in there, having a play. Yep, it's 10.5 in DraftKings is at 10.5 right now. So there's it's moving a little bit. I thought it would move a little bit more based on how bad it was, and knowing that Dallas can't cover. I mean, let's face it, they can't cover either, Dave. They can't stop the run and can't cover. I mean, think about it. When you line them up, can't play the run, can't run the ball, and can't cover. That's not a good recipe.
No, I want to read you something that somebody wrote this on August 19th. Said the Dallas Cowboys are front runners, plain and simple. This year, they won't be running in front. My evaluation is knowing how hard it is for players and coaches to function well with lame duck status, especially when the team hasn't been able to overcome obstacles before. You know who wrote that?
I think I wrote that.
You wrote that on August 19th. Spot on, my friend. That's exactly.
Yeah,
sadly.
well, because to me, Jerry put him in this spot. When you're a lame duck, when you're the substitute teacher, it don't work.
You nailed it. By the way, America is worse off for it today, by the way, on this Tuesday. So the funeral is done in Dallas. 34-10 is the final. Texans get the money. It goes over. We've got a lot to get to. Get to some line moves that we see across the league. That's next year on the Lombardi Line.
Coming up Tuesday on Follow the Money, fun show. The CEO of Circa, Derek Stevens. We're under 100 in Circa Survivor. Spirits educator and mixologist J.R. Starkus. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it, it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's late night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue the conversation here on a Tuesday. It is the Lombardi Line. Michael Lombardi, Dave Ross here with you, and we'll get to some of those line moves in a second. We mentioned the Cowboys only going up from 10 to 10.5. I'm a little bit surprised by that, too. I thought it might be a little bit bigger, but we'll see if the market adjusts as the week goes on, as we get ready for Week 12. Kicking off Thursday night, Steelers are going to play in Cleveland right now. Steelers 4-point favorites in that one, so we'll get to those numbers here in a second. But there is some injury news, Michael, which is certainly significant if you're a 49ers backer. Brock Purdy day-to-day with right shoulder soreness, and this is on the heels of their star edge rusher, Nick Bosa, who's got a hip and oblique situation. He's going to be evaluated throughout the week. And as Elliot Bowman was explaining here, our fine producer, during the break, Michael, it feels like it's a different injury than the one that we thought was going to limit him last week. So he's dealing with a couple of issues now for Bosa. I mean, you can make up certain players, but you start going to Brock Purdy and you start going to Nick Bosa, in every game now at 5-5 for the Niners is going to be paramount down the stretch here. What do you make of that? And it's gone to 2.5. I don't know if it's just because of that injury news here for the Packer game on Sunday.
I still think the Niners are overvalued in the marketplace. I think when you look at them, their whole concept on defense is we have to win with our 4 rushers, right? And we've got to be dominant in the defensive front. Well, they used to be dominant in the defensive front. They're not anymore. The Hargrave loss was significant because for them to be really effective, they need a dominating force inside. They signed Malik Collins this offseason. Malik has been with a couple teams. He's a good player. He just doesn't have enough size, enough power to really command double teams. And so, therefore, this whole concept defensively, which is you need a 3 technique where you've got to slide to him. You need someone like a Jalen Carter where it's hard to block one-on-one. They don't have that. And then they have Nick Bosa, but then against Seattle, he gets hurt. And remember, Seattle was the number 1 team in the National Football League in scoring points in the 2-minute drill. That's what they're really good at doing. They can spread you out. If their line can protect and you're tired, their skill players are good enough to win against anyone. So, look, I just think the Niners are in a tough spot due to injuries, coming off a Super Bowl, long season. The other guy that no one talks about is Deebo Samuel. I mean, he averages under 3 yards a carry.
Oof.
Right? And so every time they give him the ball, it's a waste of play, whether it's a jet sweep or a toss play. Like, they're trying to get him the football, but there's no juice in his tank. There's nothing really there that's going. And I think, to me, I think he could be injured too, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of players that are trying to fight through these injuries to help their team, but they're just not playing to the same level that you need them to play. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if this number touches 3. Now, I think it'll get some buyback if it gets to 3, but I do think it will because, look, if you're Matt LaFleur, you're going against a 49er scheme that you've seen before, you understand it, you've played it. You can block them. The Packers are the best pass protection offensive line in football, and they're not going to engage in a man-to-man game with you because they can't hold up that way.
I'll tell you this, it's our Lowe's game of the week. We'll get to that later on in this program today here, Michael. But you nailed it yesterday. You said when it opened 1.5, you thought it would go up. It's already gone up to 2.5. And now with these injury concerns, it might get to 3. I'll be very curious to see if it gets to that key number as the week goes on. I marvel at what the Lions have been able to do, right? They lose Aiden Hutchinson on the outside, kind of what we're talking about with Nick Bosa, and they go get Zadarius Smith. Now, I know Zadarius Smith is not the equivalent of Aiden Hutchinson, but you fill that gap, right? And then we talked about it briefly yesterday in the show that Alex Anzalone is on IR now for the Lions. So you take away Anzalone and Hutchinson, you start to go, ooh, the erosion of that defense, could that be a problem for Aaron Glenn and company? They go sign David Long to the practice squad. So we're well past the trade deadline. You know this as an executive. Sometimes you're finding guys in the street. We'll find out what he has left. But, Michael, I kind of look at that in the surface, and I go, that seems like smart football to me. And they're 7.5-point favorites here on the road against Elliott's Colts on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, look, they wanted more size in Miami. I think the way they want to play, they really play soft coverage. They don't want you to throw the ball over their head. They're going to keep the ball in front, and they want guys who are big and can tackle. That's not David Long. David Long was a safety in college that the Tennessee Titans moved inside the linebacker. He's very athletic and can run, but he's undersized, and he has a hard time taking people on. So I think when they made the shift down in Miami to go to the Anthony Weaver defense, they wanted bigger guys. They signed Jordan Brooks, the tackling machine from Seattle. They have Anthony Walker, who was in Cleveland, but also understands how to play the scheme. I think, to me, that's where David Long got caught up in it. I was surprised they didn't, had this happened last week, they probably would have claimed Terrell Dotson off the waiver wire, although Miami already claimed him. So there's players out there that have some deficiencies. but they can do a couple things that you need to work around, and they'll probably move David Long up there. I mean, he certainly can play third down going to first down. He's not as big as Anzalone, and they want bigger linebackers there. It puts more pressure on Jack Campbell for Detroit, really, because he now is going to have to play more.
Interesting to see. And again, 7.5-point favorites here for the Lions on the road against the Colts. Again, all these changing numbers. You can always have access to all of our shows and our live programming with our VSiN Watch app. So again, if you have not done so already, it's free, downloaded, both Apple and Android users. It's available for you right now. It really is cool. Check it out wherever you are. You can always catch up on the live VSiN programming. Let's get back to some of these injury notes here. And one that I think the Commanders have been waiting for, and that's Marshawn Lattimore. Speaking of, right before the trade deadline, they get him from the Saints. He's practicing this week, hopes that he's going to be able to go against the Cowboys here on Sunday. How big a difference can he make for Dan Quinn down the stretch for this Commanders defense?
Oh, I think to me, like in this game against CeeDee Lamb, I mean, it would be a perfect opportunity where they can put him on a guy, maybe put him on the number 2 receiver, but they can move him around. I mean, Lattimore, when he's healthy, and that's a hard thing to always say, is when he's healthy, is a good player. So that gives them some, and this secondary has not been very good. I mean, they'll eventually wear down. They've missed on some picks. I mean, Manuel Forbes, their first-round pick when Marty Herney was running the team last year, what hasn't worked out under the Ron Rivera administration. So it's going to be a little bit of an upgrade, certainly. They just got to get him to the field healthy. And, look, the one thing about Washington, they're a 10.5-point favorite here against the Cowboys. They got to force you to play from in front, right? That's where they're really good at doing. They're the number 2 team in the National Football, or number 3 team in the National Football League in first-half point differential. And that takes so much pressure off of your defense. It goes back to why were the Cowboys so successful last year? Well, they played with a 124-point differential in the first half. So they were able to get the lead on people and made people throw to catch up, and Quinn had a nice scheme to attack the passer. They hid their inability to play run defense, and when they lost 5 games, the opponent was able to run the football in a commanding fashion. Remember that Seattle game?
Yeah.
They went up and down the field.
Yep.
It took a long time. I mean, the Detroit game, it came down to it, so I think to me that's the biggest issue. Now, Dallas right now this year, I mean, when you look at first-half point differential, I mean, they're in the bottom third of the league. They can't do anything when it comes to that. They're behind immediately. They're 28th in the National Football League in that category. Here's what you'll always know about first-half point differential, David, is the teams that are in the top 5 will be in the Super Bowl. Detroit, the Chargers, Washington, Houston, Baltimore, Minnesota.
I'll tell you this, and to your point about getting leads. What did Mike McCarthy do? Cowboys won the toss. They deferred. It drove me crazy. It's little things, Michael. Little things like that drive me nuts. And, of course, the Texans go right down the field, 7-0, play from the lead. That's what the Commanders are going to want to do again Sunday in D.C. Very quickly, if you're looking for signs of life from that Bengals defense, I thought DJ Turner was having a nice game, even though, it was a tough one, certainly against the Chargers and that wild one on Sunday night. But bad news, suffers a fractured clavicle. So, Michael, if you're the Bengals and you're Lou Anarumo and you're trying to get help at corner, you got to bench one of your corners because you just can't, it looks like right now, just not mentally in it. This is not a good sign for a Bengals team that was already struggling defensively. If they have any signs of life, how can they shore this defense up now that Turner's going to be out?
No, I mean, I don't think they have any chance. They're going to have to keep doing what they've been doing, is try to outscore people. Look, here's the reality of it. I was talking to a bunch of coaches in the league yesterday, and I was complaining about Zach Taylor to them, and they're like, look, we don't even put the Bengals on our reels.
Wow.
And I said, what are you talking about? Well, because they basically run a third down offense and a 2-minute offense. Like, you can't study what they do and have it be effective for you. Like, that's what they are. They're a 2-minute offense, third down offense. That's all they are. They have no physicality to their team. And so that lack of physicality manifests itself into their inability to play defense. See, this isn't a player problem. This is a systematic problem that starts with the head coach and starts with his obsession with calling run plays, pass plays. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And I think ultimately you can't get away from it. And, look, I think at the end of the day, it's a fatal error. And, fortunately this week they have a bye week. I mean, there's 6 teams with a bye this week, so we get a break. We don't have to watch the Jets this week. Isn't that good, David? I mean, think about it. We don't have to watch the Falcons, the Saints, the Bengals, the Bills, and certainly we don't have to watch the Jaguars. God bless that, right?
No, we don't have to watch them. And Gabe Davis, by the way, they believe he sort of suffered a torn meniscus down there in Jacksonville, so it's going to get worse for the Jags as well. There's a lot of problems with a lot of teams around the NFL, the Bengals chief among them. When we come back, Matt Human's going to join us. We'll get some of his best bets that he sees in Week 12. Come on back. It's the Lombardi Line.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup. Then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We continue our Tuesday edition of the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross and Michael Lombardi here with you. Always a pleasure on a Tuesday to catch up with our guy. Matt Humans, of course, does a great job across the network in the Friday Football Invitational. Let's bring him in here and the progressive guest on. You can follow Matt as I do on X at Matt Humans, 247. Matt, do we have to take a look back at what we saw last night between the Cowboys and the Texans? I tried to have the therapy session with Michael off the top of the show, but I'm still not sure I'm quite over it.
Well, Dave, I tell you what, it's a lost season for the Cowgirls. 0-5 at home and outscored by 119 points in those games. I didn't tweet about this because I didn't want to gloat and make you feel bad, but I locked up another win total winner last night because I played the Cowboys under 10.5. And if your Cowboys win out, they could get to 10-7. So they're not going to get there. And I don't know how many wins they're going to get down the stretch. Over under 1.5, I'm not sure. But I'll tell you what, at this point, I want to ask Michael this. So you trade for Trey Lance and you give up a 4th-round pick, which that was too high of a pick to give up. Probably should have been a 5th or 6th-round pick for Trey Lance. Why would you not play him at this point? If you give up a 4th-round pick and you're not winning with Cooper Rush, you're not even close, why would you not put Trey Lance out there?
You did play him. You played him in every single preseason game this summer. I think he threw more passes than any quarterback in the preseason. And he's not any good. He's not any good, and they can't justify. Everybody knows he's not any. The fact he's on the roster is actually more of the question. Why is he on the roster? He's just not any good. His arm motion is horrible. Look, there's a lot of things that happened during COVID. And I think part of the COVID problem was a lot of this evaluations that were going on that weren't good. And this kid is one of them. And the media got behind him for some reason. I mean, we have people on other shows that thought he was the best player of the draft. You know, and look, I thought Mac Jones was a better player. Completely wrong on that. Mac Jones is a disaster too. But Mac Jones at least had one good year in the league. This kid can't even get on the field.
Good news is, gentlemen, they only gave up that 4th round, Matt, as you explained. Then a 4th rounder for Mingo, who looks like he can't get on the field. So Jerry's boy, his GMing is really good. It's a quandary right now. Thursday night, Matt, I'm looking at the Steelers number against the Browns, and it just feels, it was 4. I'm seeing 3.5 this morning at DraftKings. Total of 36 here to begin Week 12. It's amazing to see what they've been able to do. Russell Wilson undefeated as a starting quarterback. Does this game feel trappy to you for Pittsburgh in the short week?
I do think it's a tricky spot here for Pittsburgh. Coming off the Ravens game, a physical game like that, and then on the road against the Browns. Now, I know some sharp bettors who love the Browns against the Saints, and I couldn't see it. I just didn't know what they were seeing there, and I couldn't get on the Browns side with that. Can you play the Browns here? Maybe, but I can't play the Steelers. Look, I've been pro Steelers pretty much the whole season. I have bet or used the Steelers in contest picks in 8 of their 10 games this season. And I was on them against the Ravens on Sunday. So I've been on the Steelers pretty much every week. I am not going to play them Thursday night. Playing 3.5 or 4 in Cleveland. I don't think this is a good spot to play Pittsburgh. Coming off the Baltimore game. Michael, what do you think we're going to see Thursday night? I just don't have enough faith in the Browns right now to say I want to play them, but I'm not going to play the Steelers.
I can't play them. I think, these games are always going to be drag out, ugly. The teams get ready for them, but the Browns' offense and their defense isn't to the same level. What I have to get away from is this notion that the Browns defense is what they were last year. Now, they weren't good on the road. They were much better at home, but they're just not good enough. When the Saints and Derek Carr can look like Mr. Precision against you, you're probably not good enough. And look, I think you always are worried about Winston, and this offensive line for Cleveland doesn't really match up to the Steelers, but I agree. It's a trap game. It's a hard game. This will be a back-and-forth field goal game all the way. If I leaned anywhere, it would be to take the Browns and the points, but to me, if this was on the Sunday slate, this would be a Hall Notes. I can't go for this game at all. Play for me.
I look at it, Matt, too, and I'm looking at this at an AFC North number. Okay, the Steelers are now over a $2 betting favorite to win the division. I know they're 8-2, and the Browns, the Ravens rather, are 7-4, Matt. But you can get plus money in the Ravens at plus $1.60, which is close to what they were all summer. We thought then the Bengals might be a part of that equation as well. Is there anything that interests you there? Like, do you think the Steelers can still, even if they possibly trip up Thursday night, or if they're going to win this division, this is the type of game they have to win on Thursday night?
Well, I think you said it best. If the Steelers go to Cleveland and win, they're going to be a stronger bet to win the division. But I do think this is a tricky spot for them. And the Ravens, you can't count the Ravens out. Steelers still have to go to Baltimore. So they don't technically think have the tiebreaker on them yet. So I don't know, nothing there for me. I just before the season, I did say I thought the Browns were going to be the worst team in the division, and I think I got that part right. Nobody was really picking the Steelers. The time to bet the Steelers to win the division is long gone. But now the Browns' collapse is not to surprise me because I just had zero faith in Deshaun Watson and what he was going to do. And the Browns, the wheels are falling off that team. But that said, I think Thursday night they could show up and give a big effort. So it would be Browns or pass. As of right now, I'm going to pass, but we'll see. Maybe I'll end up playing the Browns by Thursday.
Yeah, I'm 3.5 is the adjusted win total for Cleveland, Michael. I mean, that's 3.5 is where they are. The wheels have come off, to Matt's point.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not. I mean, I can't trust Jameis Winston. I know everybody everybody was on him, the Browns last week against the Saints. I agree with Maddie. I mean, it to me is hard to trust Jameis Winston and to trust a defense and to trust an offensive line. That is, losing Bill Callahan for Cleveland probably was the biggest loss of anything because that line played better last year. It's not. And look, let's face it. Nobody expected Nick Chubb to bounce back off of that gruesome injury he suffered in week 2 of last year. And so he's not the same player he once was. Speaking of not the same player, the 49ers are not the same team. I think it's fairly obvious, right? They can't close out games in the fourth quarter, Matt. They've got the Packers who are really good at home. They're explosive. They only let Love throw the ball 17 times last week against the Bears. They were able to pull out the win with only having the ball for 23 minutes. Who do you like in this game?
I was not impressed by the way the Packers played against the Bears, obviously, and I've not been very impressed with Jordan Love the entire season. His play's been a little bit down, kind of like C.J. Stroud and the Texans. Betting public all over the Packers, all over the Texans in the summer, and I said at the time, I'm going to stay away from those two teams because they're getting a little bit too trendy, and I think they've both been kind of disappointing. Now, that said, 49ers, I just went back and double-checked. I bet the 49ers under 11.5 wins. That's in. That's in, too. And you're right about the Niners. That's a team that's so banged up right now. I don't want to play them in this game at Green Bay. Packers laying less than 2.5, if anything, would be the side I'm on. I was reading the 49ers practice report from Monday, and now Nick Bosa is questionable to play. Trent Williams did play the entire game against Seattle, but he's really banged up. They've got so many players, and Brock Purdy's got shoulder soreness now, where he's going to be day-to-day, Kyle Shanahan said. So 49ers are such a banged-up team going on the road here to Green Bay. I think it's going to be Packers or pass for me, even though I have not been very impressed by the Packers.
Yeah, right there with you on that play because of those injuries in that news today that Brock Purdy, we'll find out about if he's able to go, and certainly Nick Bosa as well. And Trent Williams is always on that injury report, that's for sure. I know you've got an in-pocket play here for Fly Eagles Fly against the Rams going cross-country for this one here. Do you like the home team, even though it might not be a home crowd advantage?
Yeah, I do like the Rams +3 in this game. This is a Sunday night game, right? I believe it is.
Yep.
And Matthew Stafford got back on track. So did that Rams offensive line against the Patriots, who had sacked Caleb Williams 9 times in that game against the Bears. Stafford passed for 295 after a really slow start, 4 touchdowns, no picks, no sacks. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp both got over 100 yards. And the Rams really got on track with the running game, too. Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, I think, combined for 107 on the ground in that game against the Patriots. You know, the Eagles are on a bit of a run here. I think won 6 in a row to get to 8-2, and I've got the Eagles to win the NFC East. But I'll tell you what, it's not going to be tough, or it is going to be tough down the stretch for Philadelphia to finish this off, because now is when their schedule is going to get a little bit more difficult. They're going to L.A. after this, a trip to Baltimore. Still got games against the Steelers and the Commanders on the road. So there's a tough road to travel here for Philadelphia to still win the NFC East. And I actually think the Rams are going to be live in this game. on Sunday night. I really like the way Jared Verse and this Rams defense is starting to play. And I really, even though the Eagles won 6 in a row, I've seen some flaws in Philadelphia. And I think Saquon Barkley's great play has got covered up some of that.
Yeah, I think that's a smart assessment. I love how, even though you've got that future play on the Eagles, certainly does not affect the week-to-week handicap, that this might be a time to hop on the Rams +3. Matt, I always appreciate the conversation, my friend. Enjoy the rest of the day. We can't wait to see you for Friday Night Football Invitational as well.
You bet, guys. Thank
there
you.
Is Matt Humans. Give him a follow at Matt Humans 247. We'll get back to the NFL. A meeting in Jacksonville delayed? We'll explain next here in the Lombardi.
Got a good thing coming, so wait and see. It's a good.
You spoke, we listened. Introducing the all-new VSiN Watch app. Now, you can watch and listen to VSiN expert analysis live wherever you are. Missed a show? No problem. Catch replays of VSiN's full lineup at any time. View highlights sorted by sport. Or use the search feature to find specific teams and topics you're looking for. And the best part? It's free for a limited time. Download the VSiN Watch app today. Available now on the App Store and Google Play. And join us on the Sports Betting Network.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
It is the Tuesday edition of the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross and Michael Lombardi here with you. Enjoyed the conversation with Matt Humans. As always, going to have Jonathan Von Tobel join us in hour number 2. And, Michael, this is interesting because I feel like this segment that Elliot Bowman has put together is really the battle of the bastards, right? We're going to start looking here, if you're looking in Game of Thrones terms, of some really bad teams and the scenarios of where we go from here. Maybe the worst is the Jags, right? And again, I'm not saying they're the worst, but they're certainly in the conversation. We didn't know if Doug Peterson would make it to the end of business yesterday. He did. Says there's no meeting with Shad Khan set until Monday. Now, it's the bye week for the Jags. What do you make of that? Is this the Costanza, I'm just going to keep going to work until they tell me I can't go to work anymore? Is that what's happening here with Doug?
Well, I think the bigger issue is who are they going to replace him with? That's always the challenge, right? Like, how do we keep the team together? How do we not get blown out 52-6 again? Like, how do we avoid being embarrassed? And to me, now you're asking me, the season's lost. Now the owner's got to pay somebody to become the head coach, give him more money in his salary. He's got to, all of a sudden, are all these moves really going to work out? I mean, this is Doug's mess. Let him lay in it. I think that's the feeling. It's not baseball where, you can change managers and get an uptick really quickly. It's hard. I mean, I know Darren Rizzi's done a really good job down in New Orleans changing that when he took over for Dennis Allen. But this is a harder endeavor. Now who's calling plays? Doug loves to call plays. Are you going to make Press Taylor the head coach? You can't possibly do that as bad as this offense is. Who's got leadership skills to lead the staff? Who's not going to abandon it? And then you're basically saying to the team, look, it's not your fault. He was a bad coach. It's a tough situation to be in. I think, to me, if you can do it with the best possible way, is just to get through the end of the year if you possibly can. Because, unfortunately, we've seen happen is guys that become the interim, they do the job for the owner, and then they're out too. They get fired too, and that's always hard to do.
Yeah, it is. You're looking at that number 1 pick, and I'm sure me by now, Michael. My phone's blowing up during that Cowboy game. I got my buddy Chris Antonacci sending me the 2025 NFL draft order. He's a Giants fan, by the way, and he says racing to the bottom, Cowboys and Giants, right? And I'm like, I didn't realize that's where the Cowboys would be. The Giants, by the way, to have the fewest wins and be on the clock, they're plus 450 in this equation. Didn't factor in the Cowboys yet with that loss last night. See the Browns right now as the favorites at plus 350 here. Could Brian Daboll really be coaching for his job? And obviously you're making that change. Okay, because you made the change at quarterback, right?
He has to be. I mean, look, they've gotten progressively worse. They haven't. Look, I think all these owners have to sit there and say, have you solved the problem? This is year 3.
Yeah.
This is year 3. Have they made the team better in 3 years? I could see if they're losing games by a play here or a play there, they're really competitive. But, when you go back and you look from the second, and I should do this, but, they lost to Seattle in year 1. From that Seattle game, they went on a bye week. And then from that point on, I know they had the one playoff win against Minnesota, but they haven't been a good team. I mean, Houston went in there as one of the worst teams in the league and didn't punt in the second half, but lost the game because Davis Mills turned it over. Like, this was not – they haven't been playing to a level. Of course, the biggest problem with the New York Football Giants is they can't evaluate their own team. They just can't. They over-evaluate them. I mean, here they are now. Daniel Jones is the number 3 quarterback, right? You got Drew Lock is number 2, and you paid him $5 million. You could have gave the $5 million to Barkley and had kept your team together. But this – to me, firing Daboll is just really kicking a deck chair off the Titanic because the institutional problems at the Giants are never going away. Like, this is the 4th head coach John Mara's hired, and they've all been bad. And so is it John Mara can't pick a coach? That's an obvious answer. Or is the structure so bad you can't win? And I think the structure's really bad there. So I don't see how Tommy DeVito couldn't play at Syracuse. Yeah, he transferred to Illinois.
Yeah, as a Syracuse backer, I remember it very well. And they're going to go back to Tommy Cutlets. He's going to get the start this week. And again, that was announced over the bye week and early this week. And I listened to the Daboll press conference yesterday, Michael, and kind of that tone and tenor. He seemed like he was in good spirits. I don't know if we're just kind of putting on a facade here with the New York media, but I think they feel like, and you know what this is like, the New York media is different. I think they feel like the sharks are circling, right? Like this thing, it's not going to get better this year.
How is John Mara going to come at the end of the year after his team is, say they have 4 wins and 13 losses, and say, I believe in Joe Schoen? I mean, first of all, Joe Schoen basically disrespected him he said, I will have a hard time if I have to watch this guy play in Philly. He did. Any other owner in the league would have fired the GM after this. Like, to me, Al Davis would have sent me to Elba. I mean, it would have been over. I would have a hard time coming to work.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the whole offseason planning has been like anybody who's telling me the Giants have gotten better since Joe Schoen took over, you're just a media member that Joe Schoen's feeding you information. They haven't gotten any better. They're just as bad in the offensive line as they've ever been. Okay, so they've added Malik Neighbors, great. You know, they've added Tracy, a running back. You gave Singletary all this money. You signed Runyon. You signed 3 guys to your offensive line. Your line's not even better. You gave Brian Burns all that money, right? And, so you lead the league in sacks. You can't stop anybody in the run. It's just, to me, it's like if you're John Mara, you got to take a step back and look at this and say, wait a minute. And going to, I read with Jordan Schultz, who I got great respect for, saying that he went with Cutlets because he knows the offense and he knows what he wants to do. But that doesn't mean he can do it. That's one of the biggest fallacies in coaching. That always, I'm going to go with the player that knows what to do. But he's not any good.
Right.
So what does that do us? What good does that do us? If he's not any good, what are we doing?
You saw last night with Cooper Rush. He knows what to do, but can he execute the offense?
But he's not any good.
That's the problem right there. So, will Brian Daboll make it to Black Monday? Will Doug Peterson make it to Black Monday? We know we're going to make it to Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. So, again, if you're not a VSiN Pro subscriber yet, you can get VSiN Pro access to everything we do all the way through May 1st for only $60. That is quite the deal. Premium access, 24/7 video access. Again, check up on all your favorite shows across the network. So all you have to do, go to VSiN.com/subscribe. Sign up the Black Friday special now. That's VSIN.com/subscribe. The race to the bottom continues in Carolina, although you're kind of getting off the deck a little bit, playing a little bit better football. I don't know if Bryce Young is ever going to be the value of the number 1 pick overall, but he's going to be the guy. They're still going to go with him against the Chiefs, who are coming off their first loss. Panthers, by the way, are 9-1 to have the fewest wins in the regular season here. Is this the right move that you just say, you know what, Dave Canales, year 1, new head coach, I got to figure out if my new head coach and my second-year quarterback are symbiotic? Is that what this is about at this stage?
I have no idea what they do in Carolina that makes any sense. Don't ask me a Carolina question. I plead the fifth. I mean, I need Frank Pantangeli here with me. There's no way. There's no way. I can't say anything. Look, I think they're just not a good team. I think they're poorly constructed, and I think they're going to, Jonathan Brooks is going to play this week. Look, they won a game over in Munich. Give them credit for that. They beat the Giants. I mean, let that sink in for a while. You just lost to the Carolina Panthers, and you're a New York Giant. You know what? I have a hard time, and I hate to keep going back to the Giants, but, you're the New York Football Giants. Do you realize you have Tommy DeVito starting quarterback for you? I mean, that's like, wait a second. We're a prestigious Hall of Fame franchise that has had incredible success. This is what we resorted to? Does it get lower than this?
No, I don't think it does. And again, I got to be honest with you, Michael. Looking back in the summer, I remember thinking maybe the Giants could be sneaky. I thought maybe it wasn't because of the hard knocks or any of that. I thought if those guys that you mentioned on the offensive line, if Burns could be better at getting after the quarterback, if Thibodeau, we didn't know about the injuries that he'd have here. I thought they had some pieces, but you're right. I mean, when you do the math and the money, where they really went wrong is Saquon Barkley. You hate to keep going back to that, but you see the effect that it's having in Philadelphia to transform their offense. And now Singletary, who they bring over to replace Saquon, they don't even play him because they're playing Tracy, right? So it's like, you're right. When you say they can't evaluate their own guys, you didn't have to give the money to Singletary. You could have, if you're going to go to this rookie, you could have saved that money. So it doesn't get a whole lot lower. And again, sadly, America, we're going to have to watch the Giants and the Cowboys over Thanksgiving when you're ingesting that turkey that you're having on Thanksgiving. It's not going to be fun to watch, Michael, but you're also right. We're going to watch it. That's for sure. We got a lot to get to in hour number 2, including our game of the week. And we'll get back to that one with the numbers changing between the Packers and the Niners. That's next here on hour number 2 of the Lombardi Line.
This Black Friday, get a VSiN Pro subscription for just $60 through May 1st.